Hey, before we begin, if you enjoy horror videos like this, please subscribe for more, follow me on Twitch for horror gaming streams, and on Instagram for other general life stuff. Please enjoy the video. 2003's Monster Man tells the story of a literal monster man who kills people with a monster truck, and that's kind of all you need to know as the selling point. However, I've gotta be honest out the gate here, out of all the obscure horror movies I've revisited from my childhood over the years, when this one reared its ugly head back into my memories, my childhood rewatch was unfortunately a major disappointment. That said, instead of putting it to the side and letting it fade back into obscurity, I've decided to share my conflicted sentiments while leaving the floor open to those passionate enough to defend it in the comments as a modest guilty pleasure. The surprising caveat with Monster Man is that while on paper it's a schlocky, self-indulgent homage to splatter exploitation B-movies, that premise is secondary to the fact it actually has more in common with the tropey sex comedies that perpetrated the late 90s, early 2000s. In fact, outside storyboarding one slasher flick and monster movies like The Cellar and the brilliant Tremors, writer-director Michael Davis had only ever previously directed sex comedies. Hell, even the film's lead actor, Eric Youngman, was technically just hot off a supporting role in the relatively popular sex comedy parody Not Another Teen Movies, so there is that sense that Monster Man at the very least was aiming to capitalize on some aspects of the trend, along with the ensuing popularity of the horror genre. One could make comparisons to Broken Lizard's Club Dread, which I covered before, in how it fuses the problematic sensibilities of what American Pie cultivated with slapsticky slasher flicks pushed to the extreme by Scary Movie. However, as a horror, Monster Man is best compared to Wrong Turn style pulpy backwoods splatter flicks with explicit influence taken directly from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Jeepers Creepers, and Roadkill. By the way, random side note, but writer-director Michael Davis did go on to make one of my favorite action films, Shoot 'Em Up, so if you like the idea of a violently bonkers slapstick action movie with Paul Giamatti hamming it up as the villain, go fucking nuts. Anyway, I think I've adequately contextualized the type of experience you're likely to have with Monster Man, so if you're still with me and curious to see where this weird journey goes, brace yourself for nosebleeds and titty twisters as we explore this deeply questionable monstrosity. Now, before we drive into the madness, this video is sponsored by Raycon. Raycon is turning another year old, and to celebrate, they're giving you 30% off their bone conduction headphones. This comfortably fitting bad boy is perfect for those who love to stay active, and especially for those who want high quality audio while still being able to hear everything going on around them. With shorter days and darker nights as we enter into fall, staying safe when out and about is essential, and the beauty of Raycon's bone conduction headphones is that they use off-ear audio and send sound through vibrations in your bones, so you still get crystal clear music, podcasts, and calls, but your ears remain open to the world around you. I've started using bone conduction headphones when taking Cheddar on his evening walks because I want to listen and enjoy podcasts and de-stress after a long day, but still remain fully aware of busy traffic, cyclists, and people coming from behind. Raycon's bone conduction headphones have 13 hours of battery life, are IP68 waterproof and dustproof, and with no earbud fit, I don't even have to worry about them ever falling out. Raycon gives you premium performance without the premium price tag. Over 3 million customers already love Raycon, and with a 30-day happiness guarantee, you have nothing to lose. Simply scan the QR code on screen, click the link in the description box below, or go to buyraycon.com/RyanBC to get 30% off bone conduction headphones today. Monster Man comes sprinting out the gate in the first few seconds by showing a man having his head crushed by a vice in the hopes of quenching your bloodlust, given we will not see anyone else get slaughtered on screen until almost an hour later. Settle in, because the next hour focuses entirely on the unmovable relationship between the timid Adam and his boisterous best friend Harley, who the film desperately wants to make their American Pie Stifler insert.
Ooh boy. Telling you she's got a lot of horsepower under that hood and she's gonna be one sweet ride.
This relationship right here is the crux of the entire film. All due respect to Harley's actor, he's an engaging on-screen presence, but he is just not as pitifully charming as Seann William Scott in his constant efforts to be aggressively try-hard with perpetual perversions and offensive comments about the locals. While the banter is fun at first, it grows tiresome and tedious very quickly when Harley just never shuts the fuck up, even when his life is on the line.
I'm a corpse burrito, dude!
I can certainly see why I like this juvenile humor as a kid, and I do understand many people may perceive the film as a parody of those perverse sex comedy characters, as it does lean strongly on exaggerating those eccentricities, but it simply lacks the nuance or introspection for it to feel deliberate. To its credit, the film never takes itself seriously, and of course, neither should you, but it does make the road trip feel arduous and overbearing when it repeatedly fails to land its jokes. Now, before you say I'm fun at parties, don't get me wrong, I'm all for crass humor and silly antics, but it's exhausting, especially when you're just waiting for something interesting to happen between them. In fact, there's a moment where Adam tries to tell a tragic story about friends dying in a car accident and how it impacted him personally, and Harley can't resist but make light of it.
After a few years, her corpse will totally be rotting in the ground, but her carcass will have these perfect silicone implants still sitting on her decayed chest.
Again, this isn't a slight at the actors, they do well at bringing their characters to life with the material they have, but it's very late into the film when their friendship begins to feel legitimately sincere. Thankfully, until then, Adam does help ground Harley's extroverted personality, although his character comes with his own baggage, which is how much the film wants you to see Adam as this uptight loser who's constantly called a wussy by Harley, and even later by the fucking killer. At the very least, you could say the story has that sort of early 2000s male masculine crisis of identity, where Adam contrasts with the precarious laid-back Harley and is trying to find his inner strength and bravado and just be confident in who he is and what he needs, with his laminated photos and big fanny pack filled with stationery, and oh my god, I've never seen a man with so much Velcro.
What?
I'm speechless.
Like, it's fine, just obnoxious, and that's coming from someone as admittedly obnoxious as me. In fact, I'm fully aware that Adam's character is basically me to many degrees, so I did find his quirkiness quite endearing, and in small moments where both men do behave like actual friends, it can be fun and engaging. Despite his constant ball-busting and uncomfortable derogatoriness, Harley is ultimately a good friend who spends his time trying to convince Adam not to follow through with his poorly thought-out motive of crashing his ex-girlfriend's wedding to tell her that he loves her. It is similar to the plot of Road Trip, where along the way Adam does come to realize his motive isn't as sentimental as he thinks it is when his ex-girlfriend never really cared about him, but this is entirely based on Harley's opinion rather than a character we come to learn anything about. Hell, Harley even later admits to having sex with Adam's ex, so he doesn't exactly help the messiness of the situation. However, thankfully, all this petty squabble becomes irrelevant when an intimidating rustic monster truck finally emerges out of nowhere and harasses the pair off the road when they run out of fuel. Now, unfortunately, the chase sequences are pretty short, but the film absolutely nails the towering, menacing appearance of the monster truck. It's almost shaped like the head of a wolf, and its animated suspension perfectly accentuates its predatory characteristics. Contrasted against Adam's banger of a car, it's basically a lion chasing down a gazelle, an imposing force of nature that arrives like a bat out of hell, a phrase that will eventually prove to be somewhat fitting. They soon miraculously discover an abandoned camper van that, unbeknownst to them, contains a decapitated corpse, and Harley begins siphoning for gas, or at least after Adam mocks him for siphoning a septic tank at first, and further unbeknownst to them, a massive pentagram surrounds the site, evoking a demonic undercurrent. Later down the road, they stop at the grossest pit stop restroom to ever grace cinema, and a notably sinister atmosphere is evoked when the monster truck arrives soon after and the driver enters the restroom, leaving Harley to think it would be hilarious to piss inside of it. In what is legitimately the film's most eerie moment, when Harley opens the hatch, there are these subtle, ethereal moans and screams, or at least the impression of such, as though souls are trapped within. We then get a quick glance of the driver through a fucking glory hole, and suddenly things begin to feel real, if ominously unearthly. As a quick side tangent, I actually quite like what the film is going for aesthetically. It's got that tinge of humid, stuffy ugliness akin to Texas Chainsaw, but also the colourful tints associated with classic B-movies. Sure, it's working with a direct-to-video budget, as if it's something you would find on the Sci-Fi Channel. In fact, now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure I actually saw this on the Horror Channel at one point, but the balance between murky grit and nightmarish exaggeration helps sustain its energetic comedic horror sensibilities. While staying at a motel, they awaken to find themselves godfathered after the monster man leaves the gory carcass of a roadkill on their beds, prompting them to flee, at least not until Harley finishes dreaming about having sex with what he thinks is a vagina, only to encounter a mysterious hitchhiker called Sarah. Now, oddly, Sarah's introduction doesn't really add much to the dynamic of the story at first, and instead only further highlights a lot of the grossly problematic behavior stemming from the American Pie era, because from here, both men only ever think with their dicks and leeringly talk about who is going to sleep with her. Hell, Sarah even willingly encourages their perversions rather than act as a foil to call them out on their behavior, although granted there is more to her that's implied early, but she ends up being just as shallow and uninteresting. Look, I'm aware I'm asking too much, but when you're nearly an hour into a film about a monster man killing people with a monster truck and you've yet to truly see it in action, your character drama better have a point. Thankfully, it does soon once again get interrupted when we finally see the monster truck mowing down a man the group previously got into an altercation with, and it ends with a vivid view of just what type of monster we're actually dealing with. Now, throughout the film, attention is placed on how every single antagonistic local the group encounters is missing a limb or inflicted with scarring, and upon being confronted by a random man trying to scare them off, he explains that the truck driver has supernatural strength and takes limbs, body parts, and organs, but notably never kills his victims, except for the 3 previous instances, but there is a convoluted reason to explain this. All will be explained by the end, but for now, it firmly cements that we are in fact dealing with something demonic, if indeed it's not nearly as sinister or brooding as the way Jeepers Creepers does it. The supernatural overtone is fully cemented when the group pass through a ghost town consisting of scarecrow-like effigies, as if designed to ward said demon away, and upon stopping for lunch, Adam discovers the human remains of the man killed the previous night in his bowl of chili. Naturally, the monster attacks, having put the corpse in the backseat of Adam's car, and soon the group are forced into the open after the car is destroyed. They're soon confronted by the man, who interestingly walks like a reanimated corpse being manipulated like a puppet on strings, and after incapacitating Harley, Sarah is taken and Adam is left to heroically follow them to a dilapidated cabin where all is finally revealed. Brace yourself. So, it turns out that Sarah's abduction was just an elaborate ploy to lure Adam inside the house so that, I swear to God, Sarah can transfer the soul of her Uncle Fester-like mangled corpse of a brother Fred into Adam's body. Yep, it turns out that these two and the Monster Man are inbred siblings, and some time back, the Monster Man, whose real name is Bob, accidentally ran over Fred in his monster truck before crashing through the front window to his own death, and Sarah, who is a devil-worshipping witch, used resurrection to bring them back. The caveat is that to remain alive, every full moon they must kill a sacrifice to appease Satan, and the reason for taking the locals' limbs and organs is to replace Bob and Fred's damaged parts that only work if the original host remains alive. It is a lot of weirdly specific detail to take in, and it is bewilderingly contrived, even to the film's own admission. In fact, it's then explained that the soul transfer spell involved a preset ritual, thus all all of Adam's harassment by Bob throughout the film was necessary to ensure his body was ready. If you somehow still have questions, too fucking bad, Adam escapes and slashes Sarah's throat with a sharpener before blinding Bob with a pencil. Thus, his fanny pack proves to be a Chekhov's gun. Meanwhile, Fred tries to flank him from behind, only to get cut in half. That leaves us with Bob, who bluntly then spells out that he can hunt perfectly based on the scent of blood, so Adam, who is prone to nosebleeds, uses his blood to lure Bob into impaling himself on some random debris. Of course, Bob survives because of the resurrection spell, but Harley arrives just in time, having stolen the monster truck, and both lads literally spend the rest of the night continuously running over Bob until there is only mince. In a genuinely tender moment, Adam and Harley apologize to each other and rekindle their bromance. They decide to go home, and honestly, I appreciate the gleefully happy ending, and it did legitimately get a laugh out of me over the fact that Bob and Fred are still alive because demonic resurrection is a bitch. Although Fred is more upset at the fact he doesn't get to fuck his sister, but that's probably for the best. Monster Man is a perfectly serviceable guilty pleasure, it's just unfortunately not for me in the end. I wished it went much further with its concept and embraced a little bit more of the ludicrousy we saw in its climax, rather than withholding it until the very end. But anyway, if you enjoyed the video or enjoyed the film at all, please let me know your thoughts in the comments below, subscribe if you haven't, and until next time, stay safe, stay away from monster trucks, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye.